So, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ian Sparks from Swisscom. I look after the blockchain infrastructure for Swisscom. And we're going to take you through today with my colleagues. So there's Peter Schnürer, who will come up after me, from Daura, and Volkmar Beck, who's also from Swisscom, and then Thomas Goetz at the end for PostFinance. And we're going to explain to you our journey through, well, Hyperledger from when we first encountered it through to the productionization and the current story which we have, which is the governance of a productive Hyperledger network and consensus as a service, which is what we're calling it. So from the very beginning, about 18 months ago, nearly 2 years ago now, we wondered how we could get going with Hyperledger Fabric. It was in the old days, in the dark days, where things weren't very clear. And the first thing that we thought to do was we need to build ourselves some tooling for this. So we came up with this concept of Hyperledger Factory. And this is how we got the platform under control for ourselves. We then extended that idea to actually take it all the way through to a production environment. And we'll explain a little bit about this afterwards. Then came the applications. And the first application that we dealt with was Daura. And Peter will be telling you more about the specialities of that application and what you should watch out for in that. And then at the end, we've got this thing called consensus as a service, which is where I think a lot of people who are looking at this today, they'll also be wondering about how do I get this really working for me in production. We're past the days of POCs and MVPs now. Now we have to start making this really, the cogs turn and make money for us. So the two parts that we came up with, and you can see this on the left-hand side, a sort of a proof of concept and a development factory. And this is, as I said at the beginning, was how we got the control of the platform for ourselves. Now, this is great for doing development on, and it's great for doing proof of concepts on. You can imagine it's a clickable GUI interface where you can run up Hyperledger Fabric networks, you can upload chain code, you can see the logs, and you can interact with it on a developer-to-machine basis. It's great for that. There's one big problem with it, though. It's not really production ready. So from 2 points of view, first of all, it's not distributed, and secondly, it's we come from the banking area, and we're very concerned about the kind of data that can be held on machines. And for us, the proof of concept factory on the left is not capable of holding anything which is sensitive data. We then came up with the picture on the right, which is our factory for production use. Now, this is actually running on our banking infrastructure, so the security is a given there. And for people who like the numbers down the side, there are all of the certifications and the operating procedures which we work to. Just to quickly give you a very brief overview, I think it's probably better that you read this yourselves afterwards. This is a little feature set of the things that we do with our factory. So what can we do with it? And for that, I would like to hand over to Peter, who will tell you about the Daura application.
Thank you very much, Ian. So before I'm going to tell you details about the Daura application, I'd like to give you a short introduction about what we believe is an ecosystem about crypto assets, about digital assets on the blockchain. It's not just about the asset, there is a whole ecosystem that we have to look at. And I'd like to give you a short introduction, what's needed to have an operating ecosystem. First, obviously, you would need some kind of digital assets, and that is exactly what Daura is doing. We are issuing shares of Swiss SME companies on the blockchain, so we are tokenizing the shares of companies. So this is some kind of crypto asset, of digital asset that's hosted on a blockchain platform, on Hyperledger platform. Now, after issuing these tokens, these digital assets, people want to do something with these assets. And if we are talking about shares, obviously they want to have exchanges that trade these digital assets. We at Daura, we are no exchange. We are an infrastructure service provider that provides tokens. For operating a change, we want, and the investors want to see regulated exchanges where we have no manipulations, no front runnings, things like that. So we need regulated exchanges here for these kind of digital assets. We are talking to several companies that are running for licensing in Europe and Singapore to operate this kind of exchanges. But that's not all. We would also need some kind of banking services, licensed and unlicensed services, that help investors, that help SME companies to issue their tokens on such a platform. So we are working together with banks that are entering the crypto field here. When we are talking about banking and assets, digital assets on a blockchain, we obviously would also need some kind of a digital vault service, which we have built at Swisscom under the label CustoDigit. So a bank will be able to hold the private keys for their customers, because, you know, not everyone wants to be his own bank. Some people want, but others want to have the private keys handled by a trusted partner, which obviously would be a bank. So looking at these 4 building blocks, shares, exchanges, banking, vaults, it's great to have them, but we need an underlying infrastructure, and this is the Hyperledger infrastructure. We will hear afterwards some more details about this infrastructure. So what's the service and the vision of Daura? What are we going to do here? We want to tokenize shares of Swiss SME companies and bring them on the blockchain. Why? Why do we want to do this? At first, we think it's very efficient to run the share register on a blockchain, because it's a register where several parties need to get trusted information, so it's made to run on a blockchain. It's an obvious case for a blockchain. And when keeping the share register and the tokens, the shares on a blockchain, the next logical step is to make it possible for SME companies to raise funds, to raise capital in a very efficient and cheap way, much more efficient and cheap than this is done today. So we are bringing completely new way to enter the capital markets for Swiss SMEs, a way that they don't have today. The services we are providing, as mentioned, is the share register, increase of capital, and peer-to-peer transfer of the tokens. This will be up and running in Q1 next year, so very soon we will go live in February with the first services. And afterwards, we will support dividend payments and shareholder meetings for voting at shareholder meetings. Now I'd like to ask Volkmar and Thomas to give us some details about the platform.
Thank you, Peter. Business applications like Daura and others hold high values and are exposed to multiple risks. Such applications must be operated in a trustworthy and reliable manner. We are convinced that a productive blockchain should not be run by a single party. So we are offering a blockchain infrastructure operated jointly by Swisscom and Swiss Post. It is based on Hyperledger Fabric, and it is distributed over multiple highly secure data centers in Switzerland. And we are offering this service both nationally and internationally.
Good. I will show you the short slide for that. For us, it's very important to have a good partner on the same level for Switzerland, that we can built up infrastructure. We call them consensus as a service in Switzerland, based on companies in Switzerland, but we are open for additional partners. We are trying to have an onboarding at second quarter this next year of many other companies. We have a lot of experience in developing Hyperledger, proof of concepts. We have experience on both sides to implement Hyperledger applications, and we have the ability to run it in a secure infrastructure, and we are able to bring the service on the market. Any questions?
Hello, thank you for your speech. I'm Ellen from Orifusely. We know each other, we met yesterday. And my question would be, as far as I know, the SIX group is digitizing the stocks, shares of the companies. So how the market is divided between you and the SIX? Like you are digitizing the shares of SMEs and they are dealing with other enterprises, or how?
So as far as I know, the SIX project, they are doing several aspects of this digital asset ecosystem I showed on my slide. So we are both companies in the crypto asset market and bringing new ideas in this market.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Vedran Brničić from Suprabit. Is it possible to invest as a international investor on your platform? And is it possible for international SMEs to tokenize their shares of their assets on your platform?
We are open to international investors. There are some countries that we have to look at, but in principle we are open to international investors. We start on the issuer side with Swiss companies.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I have a question on the first slide that you had. You talked about the token compliant with the Swiss law.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate more on that? How did you achieve that? What did it involve?
Yes. How many hours time do you have? So in very short, it's important. It's not just about tokens. You know, issuing a token is done on a Sunday afternoon. That's no big business. What we have to look at is that this token is linked with the rights of a shareholder from beginning when we issue a token, and when we transfer the token peer-to-peer, we have to be sure all shareholder rights go with the token. And this is not very easy accomplished. We worked about 12 months on designing the whole process. It's more legal than a tech case, but it would take hours to explain how it's done.
For that reason, we work together with MMA. It's a large legal company in Switzerland, in Zug and Zurich, and they helped us a lot of things to analyze and to define in cooperation with that and with the regulatory in Switzerland.
Do you have any more information on your website about like a white paper or a blog about this?
We have just basic information on our website because we are now focusing on going live, which will be in February. If you have some questions, just come over to me or send a request on the homepage. There is a form where you can enter your questions.
Thank you.
I have one question related to GDPR. Did you run into any issues related to storing personal data on blockchain?
We did look at this and we solved the issues, but details on how it is solved, I'm not sure how it is solved. Maybe you have some.
We have a lot of discussion about that, and it's more or less solved from the legal perspective and a technical perspective.
it's
We
good
have
that
two
it's-
aspects on this case.
I mean, great that you solved that, but do you know any? Can you share any details how you did
No.
it?
So, hi, I have a question around how did you guys issue the tokens using Fabric? Because it's not, like a native support. What strategy did you use to accomplish this?
We are a joint team.
Yeah.
I'm
You know,
an
it's a big team working
I'm an
on
old
this
crypto
case.
guy, huh? So what we're actually doing here is we're actually issuing EC elliptic curve signatures. The investor gets a signature and we keep the verification material with us. We burn the private key immediately after creation. So it's just plain crypto. There's nothing necessary on the blockchain for it. We're good?
So no further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.